Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Thought Process Podcast with your hosts, Marco and Greg. Today, we have a very special guest, actually, two very special guests. The first one is Mr. Chris Ayala himself, the usual suspect, the booking degenerate. And today, for today's rabbit hole, we're going to be diving deep into the unknown, into the Shadowlands. And for that specific and particular topic, we will bringing in Mrs. Marianne Coleman. Marianne had a lifetime experience as a medium and experiencer of UFOs. She also runs a paranormal investigation team. You can find her at walkingtheshadowlands.com. And please subscribe to her podcast. Please check it out. She has many different uh, topics that are really, really interesting, and we can't wait to get in. So here we go. Hi, Marianne. Thank you.
Hi,
Thank you for joining us today.
thanks for having me.
Yeah. So Marianne, you know, well, first of all, I was looking into some of the episodes that you were doing. I'm actually really glad that we were able to connect with you because on the last rabbit hole series that we did with Chris, who's joining us today, he had mentioned that he definitely wanted to go deep into the unknown. And by the unknown, we mean the paranormal, everything that's not in the day to day
Mm.
basis of reality, such as the paranormal, UFOs, and whatnot, right? And I went on a search. I went on a hunt to find somebody to bring onto the podcast, and I'm really happy that I found you on the Matchmaker .fm. And I thought you're a great fit, and who better to interview and to get to know than you? You mentioned that you've had a lifetime experience of being a medium. How has
Mhm.
that been?
Well, to me, it's no different than breathing. You know how to? I can't explain it because I don't know any different, really.
We
Right.
and we have talked about that kind of a concept of how people live, and they've always lived one way. They don't know any differently,
Right,
and
right.
and I've heard that used so many times in different people's experience. I met a lady once who she only has had two sets of twins, and a little kid walked up to her and said, uh, "How is it living with twins?" And she's like, "I don't know. It's the only way I know of living."
Yeah, yeah.
That's a good
Yeah.
And
analogy, I would assume.
it is a good analogy, and you don't realize that your lifestyle is different until you're talking to people who don't experience what you experience.
Mhm.
Yep, exactly.
So you mentioned that it's no different than breathing to you, right? Is
Hmm.
this is something? When did you start? I guess figuring out that what you were experiencing wasn't so normal in terms of like the your average person.
Oh, I've probably when I was a teenager, really.
Now,
Yeah.
what was that like? Like just growing up as a teenager who, I mean, first of all, for the people who like us who are very uneducated, and like what would you say the typical medium would be?
That's like saying how long's a piece of string. Everybody's unique, and everybody's individual.
Mhm.
So possibly it would be better to say maybe. Um, Gosh, I don't know how you would define that. Actually, I have to think about that. Yeah, there are certain characteristics that perhaps mediums have. It depends because there are different types of mediums, um, and or spiritual. I prefer to call myself a spiritual sensitive rather than a medium because I am a medium. I can see and talk to spirit, but also I feel things in my body. I'm clairsentient. I get a lot of my information through in the forms of feelings, and clear cognizant, which is just a knowing. You just know things. You don't know how you know it. You just know it. It's not something that spirits told you. It's just an inner knowing. And I see you nodding, Greg. You know what I'm talking about.
Mhm.
Um, it's so it seems that it's more about correct me if I'm wrong. It's more about like how you what you feel and how basically you interact with the world,
Mm,
right? I
mm,
mean, we all know there's air because we can feel the breeze, right? We know
right.
that the air exists, or liquids because you can feel them and they're wet. And
Hmm.
so I would imagine that it's sort of like a sixth sense. I mean, it sounds very cliche, but am I right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's nothing that I don't have anything that other people don't have. Oh well, except perhaps speaking to spirit. Every single living person has abilities, has a sixth sense in one way or another. But most people don't recognize it. Most people just act on a hunch, or they follow their gut feeling, but
Mhm.
they don't realize that that's actually uh, part and parcel of us being human. Everybody has it. It's just like athletes, some people like me can maybe run 20 feet if I'm lucky, and other people can run marathons without getting breathless. It's individual to each person.
So
So
would you say some people are more in tune with that frequency, I guess?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yep. That's a
So,
good way of
so
looking at it. Yeah.
I'm just kind of trying to put a picture around it because this is a topic that I'm obviously really really curious and interested in. Do you have those overwhelming feelings sometimes when you walk into a room and there's that negative energy or even a positive energy with no one really there?
That's
You kind of
called
walk in.
clairsentience. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So do you feel that?
Yes, that's what I said before. I
Okay.
feel things. One of my major gifts has been a clairsentient, and most people can pick that up. Most people can walk in a room and say, "Oh, this feels uncomfortable." If somebody's just had an argument in the room and they've left the room, and you walk into that room, a lot of people can feel that, but they don't necessarily recognize what it is that they're picking up. They just know perhaps it feels uncomfortable, or it feels a little bit cold, or whatever. Mm.
So, I actually had I was speaking to one of my doctors, right? So I've been going to see this psychologist for a while, and after a while, I told him like, "Hey, like, is this just me, or does the average person like do this?" And he's like, "No, you're just more sensitive than other people." And so I imagine that it's in the same, to describe it. I think to put a like Chris said, to paint a picture, I think it would be fair to say that it's more that you're sensitive to this energies. Is that right?
Correct. Yes, yeah.
Because a lot of people,
That's a really good way of explaining it. Yeah.
would say that being a medium is like you can talk to spirits, right? And
Hmm.
you just mentioned that you've had experiences with that. Um, is that right?
Yes, yes, all the time. Mm.
How old were you? And if you don't mind me asking, how old were you when you first started having these types of encounters? I guess.
Wow. See, for me, it's so closely blended in with my encounters with star people. So it's really hard for me to differentiate when my sensitivity really kicked in more than my encounters with, because the star people would take me onto their ships and they would teach me things, and I believed that they helped enhance my natural sensitivity.
Whoa. So
Can we dive into that one a little bit more? I need to digest that. There
Sure.
was a lot there. What did you say? Star people?
Yes, that's correct. I've been an experiencer since my earliest memory, conscious memory of seeing beings was when I was three
wow,
years old. I'm
Interesting.
65 this year, so it's been a whole lifetime.
65
With
young.
for me, I'm not sure what a star people is. Would that be similar
Okay,
to a spirit, or would that be similar to what most people think of an alien? Or
an alien
okay,
extraterrestrial. I call them star people because when I was little, they were people that came from the stars.
yeah, that makes sense. That's what I figured it would be.
Yeah.
Okay, what were you saying, Marco?
So I think that because I'm wondering, right? A lot of people would say that well, star people or aliens, as people say, a lot of people nowadays, if you look in the interwebs, it's all about, oh, the aliens come from a different dimension.
Mm.
And so I'm wondering if, over time, this has been happening for ages, and our definition of who and what these people do is basically, turning into the paranormal, into the unseen, the things that kind of spook you at night.
Mm. Mm.
Do you think that there's a connection there? Do you think that there's a connection between the paranormal and the star people, as you mentioned?
Oh, sorry. I thought you were speaking to Greg. Oh, my
No.
apologies. I was waiting for Greg to answer.
Is this working?
Yeah. Certainly, a lot of things that people used to believe were paranormal actually are extraterrestrial in origin. Absolutely, there is a crossover there, and certainly there are beings that are intradimensional, and as well. Mm.
So,
One of the things, sorry.
yeah, no, go ahead.
One of the things that my star people taught me, and I use this analogy a lot, is like Earth is like an onion. Okay, you know how an onion has multiple layers.
Yes.
So Earth is like the core of the onion, and around the core are multiple layers, and each layer, if you peel it back, has a membrane between each layer.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the membrane that separates our dimension from the other dimensions that surround us. So the Earth is the basic, but there's multiple dimensions around us.
Okay.
Wow, that's
Interesting. I haven't heard of that analogy yet.
So, man, this is really, really interesting, and we can go both ways, right? We can go into the paranormal here, or we can go into the extraterrestrial or the alien or the star people beings. I guess, which one of you said that you had encountered first? You had an encounter with star people first when you were at the age of 3?
Yes, correct. Yeah.
Now, for the people who are just listening and who don't yet know Mrs. Marianne, she lives in the part of New Zealand, right?
Yes, I live in New Zealand. That's correct.
New Zealand. So, how was your? I'm just trying to figure out how to frame the question. It's like, how was your first encounter? I mean, obviously you're a baby. You don't really know. You're not that aware. But was it your parents, like family, or how would you explain it?
Okay. Well, actually, I did have an encounter when I was younger, but I don't recall seeing beings. But it's my earliest memory I ever recall, and that was 18 months old. I'll start from there if you like. So
Sure.
what happened was my parents had put me to bed in my cot. It was night. The doors were shut and locked. The windows were shut. And they hear me crying, and they go to my room to find me, and I'm not in my bed. I'm not in my cot. They can't understand how I got out of my cot. They search the house frantically. They can't find me. Eventually, they find me outside in the front yard.
Oh, wow.
They have no idea how I got out there, through locked doors, through shut windows.
Right.
My recollection is I was crying, and I was looking up the stairs because I wanted to go back. But I was scared because I was outside. It was dark, and I didn't know where I was or how to get in the house. So that was my first recollection, but that's more emotional than any other recollection. But I recognize now that I have that memory set as a base memory for me that I can base all my other experiences on, because my parents used to talk about finding me outside, and they never could understand how that happened. So that was that. So now I'm 3 years old, and my parents lived in a farm. My father used to be a sharemoker. Now in New Zealand in the late 50s, in the country, we had gravel or dirt roads, no street lights. There weren't a lot of cars that used the roads.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't like it is today. So we had been somewhere, and in the car in the front was my mum and dad, In the back seat was my older sisters. One was a half sister and my older sister. They're both older than me. And I don't know where we'd been to get groceries or something. It was dark. But I think it must have been winter because it can't have been too late. They had children, so they wouldn't have had us out too late. And we were coming home along this country road, and there was this car coming behind us, and the lights were really incredibly bright. And I remember Mum saying to Dad, "God, those lights are bright, Leo." You know, he flicked his rear screen up so it didn't blind him. But we didn't think anything else. They just thought that the car had its bright lights on. And then we got to where we turned off to the left to go into the farm, and you have to drive down the drive a little bit and then open a gate because the gates kept shut because of the cows. So as we paused to turn into the drive, the car that was behind us shot up vertically. That's vertically, isn't it? I always get that confused. It's just shot up.
Yeah,
and
it
that
shot up
was
vertically.
that was when my parents realized, oh, this isn't a car. What the heck was that? Anyway, we got down to the drive, a few yards down to the drive, stopped the car, and as soon as we stopped the car, this bright light came down around the car, like you see in the movies.
Right.
If you ever saw that Travis Walton story, like that, it was like that. Bright white light. And my sisters were crying. They were scared. Mum and Dad were arguing. Daff, go and open the gate so we can get. I'm not getting out of the car. You get out of the car. Then we could see around the car. You could see the outline of like silhouetted figures. You couldn't see any features. Humanoid figures walking around the car. I was the only one that wasn't scared. I was excited because I knew who it was. I knew who it was.
So, just really quick, at that point in time, how long had it been since the first encounter that you imagine?
Well, the first encounter was when I was 18 months. This was when I was 3.
Oh, okay. I see.
Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to clear that up because, but anyway, just continue with the story.
Yeah. So, well, that's pretty much all I remember. I remember seeing these beings, their silhouettes around, and I don't remember anything else of that encounter at all. My family only remember the light around the car. They don't remember seeing beings.
Wow.
So is it safe to say that you are more spiritually in tune than your family? Because your family, it seems like your parents probably never experienced any of this until you had been born at 18 months with that first encounter.
My father had UFO encounters, not close up. I remember him telling me of an encounter he and his battalion had during the Second World War. He was in Egypt, and he said he described it as a mothership. He said it was this massive ship came down, and he said it was like watching fireworks. All these little craft came out of it, flew around, went back to it, and it took off.
Interesting.
But that was like a one-off type of thing, right? Doesn't seem like it was.
That's the only one he ever told me about. Yeah.
Okay, that's one of the things I was going to ask. It was interesting that you talked about your family being in the experience. Is it that you feel like you were in a what's the word for it? You were kind of in the right place at the right time, or they were there for you specifically, or how do you kind of
They were there for me specifically at that stage. Yeah.
Okay.
They tend to follow families through generations, specific people through generations and family lines.
Kind of like studying in a sense, almost.
Yeah. That's in a sense.
Okay.
Yeah, I have seen that's been the case for a lot of, I guess, families. A lot of people who had shared experiences. It tends to follow them for most of their lifetime.
Correct. Yeah.
So at this point in time, what was the environment that you grew up with, like around you? Were you guys very open about this at that point in time? Was it like accepted, between the community
this was back in the 50s. So in those days, which was so last century and so last millennia, These things weren't really talked about, or talked behind closed doors. They weren't openly discussed like they are today. If you talked about seeing things that fly in the sky, they would say you were crazy, or you were drunk, or you were hallucinating, whatever. They wouldn't accept it. But that never stopped me from talking. I've always talked about my experiences regardless.
But I would imagine that it's a little tough to just have, simple conversations with friends, and the community is always very skeptical, and especially if no one in that area has ever experienced something like that. People tend to be very skeptical in nature.
Oh yes, and as I grew, I learnt who to discern who I could talk to and who I couldn't through experience.
I see.
Mm.
That's definitely interesting you say that, because one thing that resonates with me is I've got a few of those experiences with my family, and we never really talked about it openly to others outside of the family until maybe 5 years ago, 6 years ago. So if we have skeptics now that judge us now, I can't even imagine what it would have been in the 50s, right? 50s, 60s, 70s, around that time period when it was even more shunned upon than it is now.
Yeah. And but I've always spoken my truth. That's how I've always lived. That's how my star people taught me to live, and so that's how I've lived. I've always been open about who I am, what I experience, and it hasn't always been to my. Sometimes it's been to my detriment, until I learnt to really not care what people thought, and I didn't really get to that stage until I was in my 30s, and then I thought. I'm not going to swear, but I was just say no. This is who I am.
We're not censored here, don't worry.
You can say what you want when you want.
Yeah, okay. Well, I just said, look, fuck it. This is who I am.
Yeah.
All right, we got some F-bombs going on.
That's your issue. I don't care if you believe me or not. I don't have anything to hide. This is my truth. This is my life. This is who I am. Either if you accept it, fine. If you don't accept it, fine. I don't expect you to believe what I say.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, how do you feel about like the people who more of the I guess you would call them higher profile people, like Mr. Bob Lazar, who has a very, very credible story, but he's never really, he was never out there for the fame. He's never really out to get what the millennials now call clout. He was always out there just speaking, the truth, and from his personal truth and what he lived in, or what he lived, and what after just coming out with the story, he went and just he was just a normal person, and it like the story was almost buried over time, and recently he just came back out in the public eye, and he clearly says himself, I'm not here to, I don't want to be bothered. I don't really want to continue in explaining myself. This is what I saw. This is what I lived, and that's that.
Exactly.
How do you feel about those people? Like you can relate with them.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Oh, it's a bit different because, he had this experience that he went through, and I'm going to put it on the record. I know he's telling the truth. Oh, we saw that static coming from.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I heard that as well.
I'm not sure where that's coming from.
Is it still?
No, it stopped.
No, I think it's
just when we were talking about Bob.
It's CIA.
It may have been the phone close to the mic.
So let me give you a little bit of background on me. I guess I'll begin with the stories back in Mexico. I'm a foreigner here. I'm actually in the States now, but I was born and raised in Mexico. And back there, UFOs were usually called omnis. That's what we know them by. and it was always a lot of speculation, and there was always a lot of talk and back and forth, and oh, like it was just a weather balloon, and it was just a. But I can like personally, I can clearly remember one time, like yourself, if back in Mexico, what 20 years ago, there was no lights, there was no, paved roads, there was nothing like that.
Mm.
We were still a very underdeveloped little town, and our fun was to go out and explore, right? And after hearing stories and stories being told by my brothers, friends, and family, it was kind of scary to just be out there, hanging out with friends, and you know, like I said, there was no light, so you literally had to be home before, before dusk, because otherwise you would have to navigate the town with no lights on. It was just people's front porch. So I remember clearly seeing we were just hanging out like one time, me and my friends, and after hearing all these stories, I remember just looking up, and there was something like a ball
Mm.
in the sky. But for the longest time, for like a month, I could have sworn it was like an omni or a UFO, right? But then it came out that it was actually a weather balloon. They actually did have weather balloons in that part of town.
Right.
And so after that, I became very skeptical of a lot of different things, um, particularly with the UFO encounters.
Mm.
But as I grow older, and I start, because I also have experiences with the paranormal, which I'll get into, right? My father passed away when I was 6 years old, so my mom she had no choice but to come to the States, right? To be able to send money so that we can eat and have pay rent.
Right.
And I remember that on one particular night, we actually had to go across town to get to a
Mm.
paper, which we did. So on the way back, it could have been maybe 10, but at that point in time, it's like midnight. It's pitch black, and um, the only light out is the moon's light.
Mm.
So I was with the group. It was me and my brother and two sisters, and we were walking down this. I guess on one side it was like a lot of farm land with cows and bulls and whatnot, and on the other it was like a creek, and then there were just like offshoots to homes here and there. But on the right, when we were walking, there's a just giant brick wall. It always seemed like never ending. Maybe
Mm.
because I was small, but on one of those on one of those pillars of the wall, and next to a what you would call, I guess it's a tree that was just broken down by time. Clearly remember seeing this figure, gray figure of a person with a cowboy hat, and it was like the whole outfit as a cowboy. And as soon as I saw that thing, whatever it was, my skin,
Mm.
I started feeling the chills.
Mm.
You know, my hairs were raising on my skin. I clearly remember just grasping towards my sister, like holding her and pointing, like there's something over there. And they all recount the same story. I alerted him. I alerted them to the person or the thing, the gray little blob thing, and we just huddled together and we walked as fast as we could just to try to get away from it. It never did anything. It just stood still until we lost it in the background, and after that, I was like, "Oh no, no, no!" I'm a firm believer that there's something, there's something out there. I can't
Right.
explain it. And my brother, my sisters, they recount the same story. And as I get older, a lot of the extraterrestrial or the star people encounters that I see almost seem like, to me, they seem more of the paranormal, because it usually happens at night. it almost never happens during the day. And I just wonder, like, I'm starting to make the correlations between the two, and I just wonder if it's one and two, and then maybe just as because of our human perception, we're looking at these two things. One, because one, we fear, so we don't really want to talk about it, and the other one, it's really just unknown. So
Mm.
I don't know. I just want to see what kind of feedback you have for me with that kind of story.
That
Like,
what you saw sounds to me suspiciously like Shadow Hatman. Have you ever heard of him?
no.
Oh, okay. I did an episode, it's my very first episode actually of my podcast, on shadow people. There's an archetypical shadow people that many people see, and he's called the Hat Man. And he looks like he's wearing a fedora hat. They see him in an outfit, but they just see a shadow form. But this being creates fear and anxiousness in people. He's a figure that creates fear. Who he is, I have no idea. Interdimensional being of some description, obviously, but that's when you were talking about that. That's immediately what came to my mind. That what you saw was the Hat Man.
You're literally giving me chills.
So now that
these flashbacks.
you're describing him, and I had a question. He makes you feel fear, but if you know about him and like it seems like you'd have more information than Marco would towards this aspect. Would you still feel fear even though you have a little bit more understanding, or how would it work that way?
This particular entity deliberately gives off fear vibes.
Okay.
He likes to create fear in people because he feeds off that energy.
Mm.
And now it's a typical, normal human response to, like, if somebody was to suddenly appear in front of me, I would jump and I would get a fright and maybe I'd let out a squeal, because that's a normal human response. It's your fight or flight syndrome kicking in. But once you get past that, it's what you feel after that lets you know if this is danger to you. Now, if I was to see a Hat Man, certainly I would recognize that he's there, but I know how to get rid of stuff like that, so it's not a problem for me. It's boundaries. You have to have boundaries, very strict boundaries when you're working with spirit
Now,
and interdimensional beings.
See, I think that's where I kind of get a little confused. There's a cousin of mine that's actually on what currently watching us live. He wants me to keep bringing up this story. So kind of similar to Marco's experience, my first time with a spirit, which I believe I know who the spirit is, when I was maybe 7 years old or 8 years old, which I wasn't alone, which kind of validates that it wasn't just a child's, mind playing tricks. It was someone else experienced it with me. What had occurred is my grandparents had lived in a home that was built in like the late 1800s, which is surprisingly old in California, right? And the type of home that was built, they had very creaky old wooden floors. So in the middle of the night, because of the heat and the coldness, how it contracts, you could hear the wood kind of cracking in the middle of the night. You never knew if there were footsteps or if they were necessarily, just the temperature. And this particular night, it was raining, and my cousin and I had actually we went to Blockbuster. If you know anybody in the podcast is listening, it used to be a video rental store. We went to go rent a movie. So me and him are in his bedroom. My aunt and uncle at the time who lived in the house were across in a different bedroom, and it must have been midnight, a little bit later than that. Lightning was occurring, and we had the door behind us wide open. My cousin and I just had this inkling that someone was watching us. So we both simultaneously looked behind us, and we could kind of see a figure, but we couldn't really until a lightning strike hit. which kind of flashed the room a little bit more. It sounds like it was coming from a movie, but I guarantee you this is exactly what occurred. We both looked, and there was this figure of a woman who happened to be darker skinned, and she happened to be heavy set, just kind of posturing like this, no more than 4 feet away from us, right behind the door. And we were just shocked for a solid 30 seconds. We didn't know what to do. My cousin just instantly popped up and ran to my aunt's and uncle's room, while I just laid there staring into this dark, empty living room where we saw this figure a few feet away.
Right.
Aunt and uncle came in, turned on the lights. We didn't see anything else. A couple of months later, we're going through old photo albums, and as we're flipping through the pages, we see a picture of my great-grandmother. I've never seen what my great-grandmother looked like, and she looked just like Aunt Jemima. Like that's what she looked like, from the hairpiece and everything. And my cousin and I look at it, we point at the picture, and we're like, this is what we saw. This is the person we saw behind us. Like, I couldn't see her facial features, but everything else about her, that's what we saw. And later to find out, that house had actually had a lot of different problems. I mean, we'd see figures walk from the front entrance where there was a gate. There was a side gate in the back house, and we would constantly see figures just open the doors, walk if they're going to our backyard. We would just stare at them through the hallway, and then run through the back to see what's going on, and that figure would disappear. Later on, there's some poltergeist stuff that occurred in the house where family members who happened to be female, when they brought males over to sleep over, like who are now my uncles, at the time they weren't, they would wake up with burning scratches on their back. And it didn't happen to just one, it happened to 3 of them. And this happened throughout my childhood, where it made me fear things, but I didn't really understand it up until currently, where I still experience things, but certain things scare me and certain things don't. So, you know, I don't run away from it anymore. There was a period of time where I lived in a house where this little girl lived there, and I thought I was the only one experiencing it. But then my sister and my parents started experiencing it, but she only really messed with me. Would go in, open and close doors in front of me while I was home alone, turn off and on the TV. She'd make running footsteps that you can hear from. I live downstairs. You can hear the upstairs just when nobody was home. So I'm super intrigued about this because I don't know what any of this means. I'm no longer scared of it. I think I've come to the conclusion where I look for it and I tease it when I probably shouldn't. I know I shouldn't confront it, but that's my go-to now. You can ask all my friends. It intrigues me. I see something, fight or flight. I'm fighting. Not that I want to fight, but I want to go. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, because you're sensitive to those energies, you probably tend to see more than the average person does, which is why they pick on you more. Because they know that you recognize them, you can see them, you can hear them. I would say don't confront, but ask them. Acknowledge their presence. Say, hey, I see you threw this book across the room. You've got my attention. What is it that you want? What is it? Often spirit are only there. They just want acknowledgement, especially if they know that somebody is aware that they, like, think of it like this. If you were sitting in a room, or say Marco, and Greg was trying to get your attention, and you could see Greg, and you knew Greg saw you, and you were trying to get his attention and talk to him, and he was just ignoring you. He knew you were there, knew you could hear him, see him, smell him, whatever, but he ignored you. How would that make you feel?
Yeah, pretty upset.
Right.
I would move some stuff around.
Yeah.
Flip the table, yeah.
Same with spirit. They just, if they're trying to get your attention, it's because they want your attention for whatever reason. And sometimes it's just as simple as, yes, I know you're there, and that's enough.
Yeah, I think the most extent that I've ever gone to actually interacting with them was I read a book And in that book, they're telling stories, and a lot of it can be fiction. And one way to interact with them, to really know if it's just your mind playing games with you or something there, is there's a couple of things you can do. I would knock on the wall, tap 3 times, pause, and then sometimes I get
Right.
So that's probably the most I've ever gone out of anything where I felt like I'm actually interacting versus just being receptive and hearing. I don't think I've gone as far as trying to talk or trying to yell.
Right.
I don't want to push it too much either.
I always say to people, treat spirit like you would treat a living person, because that's what spirit is. They're just people who don't have a physical body anymore. This body is not who we are. This body is just like a car that we use to get from point A to point B. And once that car no longer serves its purpose, we discard it and don't give it a second thought. It's just a vessel we're using. So spirit still people. They're just people without bodies, so they still have a lot of the same feelings, a lot of the same emotions, especially if they haven't moved on and stuck for whatever reason. Now there's several different types of spirit that you might encounter, and it feels to me like you've encountered a few kinds. One is residual haunting, and that's just like a tape recording, a loop where the spirit does the same thing time and time again. At 3 o'clock in the morning, it will walk from this side of the room to the other room and open the cupboard door. It repeats. It's a repeated thing, and there's a theory about that, and that's called the stone tape theory. And you'll find in places like my episode coming up next week is it's a great episode. I'm still editing it. I was editing it before I started talking to you guys. It's an interview with a chap who worked for over 20 years at a mansion in Hollywood called the Greystone Mansion, which is the Doheny estate, and it's a very, very actively haunted place.
Wow.
Actively haunted place.
I'll have to look that one up.
Yeah. I just lost my train of thought. Sorry, I obviously got really
different types of hauntings.
Right.
This one's a residual one.
Right. So the residual is they just do the same thing. Oh, stone tape. That's why I got onto the mansion, because the reason this particular place is so haunted is because it's coated with limestone. And limestone is a great conductor of energy. And any building that's built with limestone tends to have a lot of spiritual activity. What's that place up in Colorado where The Shining was filmed? It's a hotel that's very well known to be haunted because it's built on limestone.
Oh, I see.
never knew
and
that.
that's the stone tape theory. It's that the energies for residual hauntings is that the energies imprint themselves in the wood or in the stone, and they replay like a tape recorder.
So I can honestly say that I don't think I've seen that in movies. I've heard of it in TV shows. I've probably read upon it, but I don't think I've personally encountered that, where something replays over and over again.
Yes, but like the footsteps that you're hearing, that can be residual.
Yeah, see, that's a good point that you bring up, because I'm curious. I mean, you might be absolutely right. I'm just recollecting everything that I can remember from that. Those footsteps. So my sister and I are 12 years apart. She is significantly younger. So when I was a teenager, she was a little child, 5 years old roughly, and she would do those running footsteps that would bother me. She'd run from her room, which was directly on top of me, and run to my parents' room consistently over and over again so she could bother me. My sister would come downstairs when I was taking care of her. She'd run to my room, turn off the TV, and run away. And then she'd tell my parents, like, I did something to her, and I'd get in trouble for it. So these things occurred with my little sister. But these are the same things that occurred over and over again with this spirit. Right. However, the only difference between the spirit is I only saw the spirit one time, and this spirit was active between the ages of 10 to about 19. So 9 continuously years when I lived in that house. The spirit would do the running thing, or the exact same thing my sister would do. And the reason I thought it was a little girl for the longest time is because it would copy and mimic everything my sister did. It would run downstairs, it would hide behind the blinds, and it'd move the blinds when nobody was home. It would go into my room, open and close my door when I tell my sister, don't do that. do the exact same thing. And by this time, my sister's already, 10 years old, 11 years old. She's no
Right.
longer doing these things. Run into my room, turn off my TV, turn on my TV. I'd be dead
Oh, no.
asleep, turn off and on my TV.
Right.
Now, the only time I've actually witnessed it was I was with my partner at the time, my ex-girlfriend at the time. And we were in my room and we were just messing around, right? So we'll just leave it at that. And during that, she had actually looked at a mirror, not a mirror, what is it? A frame with a glass reflection on it. And the TV
Right.
was reflecting upon the glass. And she saw a little girl in the corner of the room. She was just struck. She never believed in it up until that point. She literally had no idea what to do. I got up and I'm like, hey, what's wrong? And she points at the mirror. I can't see anything in that corner. She points at the window or the glass, I guess. And I can see the reflection of a little girl in the corner of our room, just staring at us.
Right.
Never saw it again. Never saw it again.
Right.
And when I had left the home, when I purchased my own home at that point in my early 20s, no one ever experienced anything else. Not until I came back did that occur. And when I moved into my new home, a whole separate issue of problems happened. So I just don't know what these things are. I don't, that's why I don't believe it was a residual haunting.
No,
because
no,
of different things.
no. After you explain that, doesn't sound residual at all. No, she was definitely interacting. Oh, that's really interesting. But a residual haunting is somebody that does, like, it can just be footsteps going up
Right.
and down, or, you know, like there's a case in Britain where this guy saw these Roman soldiers walk through his front lounge, but he only saw them from the waist up. That's because the road that they were walking on was several feet down under his house.
Wow.
Oh, that's interesting.
Oh, man.
intense.
That's a what's that, Greg?
I have never experienced anything. The only thing that seems off to me about me growing up is I always feel like I've seen things in the corner of my eye, and I don't know if that's just me being paranoid, because I'm pretty paranoid. But I also always have a feeling at night, like if I'm home alone and I'm walking from the kitchen to my room, I'm that person who runs and shuts the door behind me. And those are the two only things that, like, I don't know why I do them.
And
I've never experienced anything that couldn't have been explained myself.
And this typically happens at night, huh, Greg?
Oh yeah, all the time.
So, and I was going to ask you, Marianne, why do all of these things tend to happen at night? You know, sometimes when it's like a blatant haunting where someone says, yes, you know, it was during the day, all my Tupperware was out of my cabinet, or everything was upside down when I left. When I first left, everything was in order. When I came back into the room, everything's upside down. Why does it always happen at night? And
sorry, go ahead.
no, well, actually, answer that question, because I have a follow-up question after that.
It's not always at night. It's just we notice it more at night, because at night we're home. There's not so much traffic noise outside. It's quieter. We can observe things more. Whereas during the day, there's a lot of activity around. But as much activity happens during the day as it does at night.
Wow,
For sure.
I hope that I don't start experiencing it more now that I'm more aware of it. Or maybe it would be a good thing, because then we can have another separate episode on that.
Sorry, can I just go back to Greg for a minute? Talking about seeing things out the corner of your eyes, that's a very common way for people to see spirit. A lot of people will just see like this movement out of the corner of their eye, and when they look, there's nothing there, and that's spirit.
It would always, when growing up, anytime I did dishes, I always thought my mom was like watching me doing dishes. I'd look over and be like, she just walked by. I was always like,
I think he needs glasses.
That's what that's what I always said. I was like, I think I need glasses, or I'm not sure what's going on right now.
Well, there is that. I always say to people, get your eyesight checked if you're having spiritual, if you're having hearing, get your hearing checked. Before you assume anything is of a spiritual nature, you have to check out the physical first.
Mm-hmm.
Now, can I...
Sorry, Mark.
Go ahead, because mine's going to branch out to a different topic. So
well, I wanted to get a little bit darker on this one. I think we've established, some stuff that we've all seen, and you've been able to give us some clarity, answer some of the questions that we've probably all been wondering we haven't really asked. Now, what is your opinion on those that aren't necessarily as friendly, those spirits that have a lot of hate in left as far as energy goes? Because there's a few things that I've encountered too, and I just kind of want to get your opinion on those. It's what do you believe? Is it just because the way someone had possibly passed, and if they would pass in a negative way, that continues to move forward in the spirit realm and in our world?
Okay, those are good questions. Okay, so the first thing I will say up front is I do not believe in demons. I have never experienced one in my entire life. I have experienced interdimensional beings who have quite a different energy that can create fear in people because the energy is really different. But to your point, I know a lot of people, as soon as they get an angry or a negative or a hostile energy around them, they automatically go to the religious construct. That's their fallback. But there are spirits who are angry, and I've come across some very, very angry spirit. I've had things thrown at me, but you know what? It's people are only angry. Anger is only a secondary emotion. It only ever covers hurt and pain. So what I always do in those situations is first I say, I acknowledge the feeling that they're putting out. I speak to them like I would a person. How do you fuse anger? You acknowledge what the person's feeling. And then you say, then I'll say something like, I'm really sorry that you're in so much pain that it's making you angry. I'm sorry that you're hurting. I'm sorry that this happened to you. How can I help you?
Wow. So, just a quick note on that. When it comes to like violent passings, I think that a lot of people report that same type of or those type of hauntings. It's when, there's a violent crime or someone is a victim of a very, very violent crime. The spirit tends to lash out. I don't know if that's what you kind of meant, Chris, when you were wondering about those types of spirits.
Yeah, I mean, the way, Marco, you've been to my condo, right? The condo we sold.
Yeah.
So the reason I bring that up is because, again, I purchased a condo shortly after I left my parents' house, and that whole spirituality with the little girl had just completely ceased.
Right.
And the condo we purchased, we were made aware when we purchased the condo that someone had passed away on premise. We weren't given exactly what details. We just knew that the person had cancer and that they passed away. And from what we were told, it was on the ambulance that happened to be on the property, not necessarily in the house.
Right.
That's what we were told. And when we lived there for 5 years, a lot of things happened. And to kind of Marco's point, we did hear things during the daylight, not just me, myself, my ex at the time as well. So she would hear footsteps coming up the stairs because it was an upstairs unit. So we'd hear loud footsteps throughout the day. She'd be napping in the living room. Step, 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 step. In the bed, in the restroom, the master bath, 3 a.m. almost on the dot all the time. We'd hear something. The bottles of shampoo fall down. The curtains move. And it wasn't more than that for about a few years until one time we were having a heated discussion in the hallway. She was in the living room. I was in the hallway, and we're just kind of going back and forth, and we're just yelling at each other. And we literally saw a frame in our hallway that was bolted on securely. It's never fallen in 4 or 5 years at that point. Lift up, swing, and fall, and shatter just to the point where it only broke the frame, but nothing else, the glass or nothing. But when it fell, it made the loudest bang that almost is inconceivable to come from that small object.
Right.
Now, I'm not a physicist. I don't know how loud that can possibly be. It just didn't really make sense. As we move out, we left the house at some point, and our neighbors came to us and told us that, hey, did they ever tell you what exactly occurred in this house? All we know is that this guy named Tony Useko, because we still get his mail, passed away in this house, and he had cancer. And they're like, oh, okay, well, do you want to know the truth?
Mm.
Yes, please. Right? He tells us that his ex-wife and his son, who happen to have autism, currently rent one of their homes. So they're still friends with them. They were the neighbors throughout the entire time they were living there.
Really?
Long story short, Tony had quit his job. He had cancer. His wife left him. His son left him. He was just kind of deteriorating mentally and physically. And he turned on the bath one day and overdosed on pills, medical pills. And I think his son found his body about 7 days later.
Oh, man.
So that to me explains all the stuff that we'd hear from the bathroom.
Yeah.
And that the dogs would always wake us up at 3 a.m. and we'd always hear something. We always thought it was a mouse. We thought of something, but we never figured out what it was until the very end. Now he didn't necessarily hurt us by any means, but it was very much a negative energy that we always felt. That probably contributed to our relationship at that point, which is why she's my ex now. But
absolutely.
By ex, I mean we got married, so she's my ex-girlfriend. She's not my wife. She's probably gonna hate this when she hears this. Anyway, so that's the negative energy I felt, but that wasn't the worst energy. I think I reiterated back at the old house how, in my grandparents' house, how my uncles now would get scratches, physical scratches.
Yes.
And it goes beyond that, but I kind of wanted to get your opinion on it because I wasn't sure how I felt about it or how that comes to. And I'm not saying it's a demon by any means. It's just the physical characters of it and actually getting hurt and injured was a first.
There are, I'm not sure how to say this.
It's a lot to digest. I'm sorry.
No, it's not that. Perfectly understood exactly what you were saying. Some spirit, when they pass over, not everybody's a nice person. And if they were nasty in life, they're going to be nasty when they pass over if they don't move on to the other realms. If they remain earthbound, their basic character stays the same. So if they were shitheads in life, they're going to be dicks in death,
Yeah, he was definitely a dick in life.
Yeah. So this person, may have been... I've had cases where spirit has been just absolutely nasty. To the point of, and I cover this in an episode called The Incubus and Succubus, where they were predators in life and they continued to be predators in death.
Okay.
That doesn't sound good.
No, like you're
just
like
pointing out the obvious there.
Yeah, and some spirit are like that. And you deal with them the way you deal with anybody who's like that in life,
Punch them in the face.
Well,
There's no face to punch,
I've had spirits say to me, "So what are you going to do, girly?" Thinking I can't do anything because I'm female. And they had a thing about females. Well, they soon learned that wasn't correct. But that what it is basic characteristics don't alter. So if they were nasty in life, they're going to be nasty in death if they haven't moved on. And your chap that committed suicide, I feel really sorry for him. When you were saying he'd passed from cancer, I was going, there's more to this. There's more to this. I was just waiting for it to come out. And I deal a lot with people who have committed suicide, and a lot of people like him don't move on because they chose to take their lives. They fear what's going to happen if they do move on because of all the religious indoctrination that they've had over their lives. And actually, it's not like that at all. So I feel really sorry for that chap. So if I had been at your place and it had been me, if you'd asked me to come in, what I would do is I would have gone and I would have opened a dialogue with him and I would have said, I'm sorry, you're in so much pain. I'm sorry you were hurting so badly that you felt your only option was to take your own life. I'm sorry that you lost everything you loved around you And I would tell him how I felt, and I'd say, but look, it's okay. You don't have to stay here. You can move on. There are better places for you to be than to be here. I feel tremendous compassion for souls like that, even the angry ones, because they're only angry because they're hurting.
Because they're misunderstood is basically what's occurring.
Yeah. Oh, some aren't. Some are just assholes. Let's face it. But you can tell the difference. You can tell the difference after you sort of get in there. And well, I can tell the difference after I get in there and I have a feel of the energies and I listen to what the people have been experiencing, and then I just feel it out, and I can tell the difference.
Yeah.
Just to add to this. Just to add to this conversation, I used to live in an apartment complex with over 230 units.
Wow.
So it was a big community. Everybody
That's a
knew each
hotel,
other.
buddy.
It's spread out, but it's everybody has a neighbor, and it was just crazy. Well, at this particular place, I had a neighbor 3 doors. I used to live in the upstairs, so it's a 2-story building. They were 3-4 doors down, but on the first floor. And it was a lady who she had her daughter, and her daughter had a son. And at this particular place, every night for the year that I lived at that particular unit, every night, or at least a few times every week, the lady would wake up yelling, "Leave me alone," in Spanish. She would say, "Leave me alone. Leave me the fuck alone. Like, just stop. Get out of here." And everybody used to just pass by. You don't want to say anything because you feel bad, but you're like, "Oh man, that lady is losing her marbles." And then little did we know that the lady used to wake up to pans being moved around. Her cabinets were opening and shutting, unbeknownst to us, right? Because we're not in the actual unit, so we can't hear all the subtle,
Right.
sounds or noises that come about at night. But she was just up to here with it. She was tired of it. She didn't know what to do anymore. So she started yelling for, I don't know, it could have been a good six months, and eventually she brought over like someone to bless the unit, and then everything was gone. It's just very interesting how sometimes you have to fight fire with fire, right? Like if if those spirits aren't that type of if they weren't nice in life, they're not going to be nice in death. So sometimes you just have to fight fire with fire, I guess, right?
Right.
Suck it up.
And well, I say, like, I often in my group, I often have this come up actually on a fairly regular basis. Generally, it's women living alone by themselves. They have an entity that comes in, or a spirit that comes in and is bothering them, and they say, "Leave me alone. Please go away. Just leave me alone. I don't want anything to do." And I say to them, "Okay, first thing first, you have to take back your territory. This is your home. You didn't invite this spirit in. He doesn't belong here. Now, you can't be all nice and say, 'Please, will you go?' You have to use your mum voice. You know that mum voice. You are not
It
welcome
still
here."
haunts me.
Yeah,
Get
I don't
over
know.
here.
I don't know if you know anything about Mexicans, but our moms, they're notorious for throwing chanclas at us.
Shoot.
Sandals, and belts. I got the occasional tree branch here and there too.
Oh, here's the switch, the actual switch. Yeah,
Funny.
yeah. Our moms, my mom has had a heavy. She has a heavy hand. I still have flashbacks from that.
Exactly.
So
I can understand why that works.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you use your best. I say to these women, use your best mum voice.
Uh-huh.
Set your boundaries. Say, "I didn't invite you here. You're not welcome. You will leave." And then do an energetic cleansing of your houses. I try to teach people to take their, not to give their power away to other people, because a lot of people think that they can't do this sort of thing themselves, that they have to get some so-called expert in to do it, but that's actually not true. That's actually not true. It's very easy to cleanse. Sometimes you have to do it a few times because some of them are a bit harder to remove than others, but anybody has the ability to do this. So with your chap who was causing the scratches, I would have done the same thing as I told that woman. First, you have to take your power back. You have to claim your home back. You have to say, you're not welcome here. You're not welcome to touch me. Stop doing this. And set your boundaries. Then do cleanse. You can put things like salt down, which stops spirit stole at the doorways. There's a lot of things that could have been done to sort that situation out. Now, I suspect there was a little bit more going on than you mentioned, apart from the scratches. I suspect there was a little bit more. The fact that it was the males that were scratched, wasn't it? The males that were scratched that were visiting.
So
Somebody who did not like premarital relations in a home.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot I don't even understand with that one, because that wasn't my house. I just simply would be there in the summers and I'd come every other weekend. But there was a room altogether in the back of the house that was closed off. Like there was a room that was closed off for a reason. And to my knowledge, a lot of my family members on my grandmother's side really messed around with witchcraft stuff. And I don't know if it was brujeria stuff. And they would be I don't know the exact terms. I don't know exactly what was done, but I know something had occurred at some point where they just blocked off that room, and we would hear noises in that room.
Okay, so they obviously brought an interdimensional through and didn't know how to get rid of it.
I'm assuming so. That house was passed around up until about 2018, which we sold it. And when we sold it, there was tenants that lived there that experienced a lot of people would almost say poltergeist type of activity, where things were, pots and pans were thrown. Doors again would be slammed. People would be almost physically attacked if they were there by themselves. But that didn't necessarily happen to the family. That's the crazy part. The family members, my immediate family, my aunts, my dad, my uncles, that were born into the family, all the nephews and grandsons, we never got attacked. We've never felt that. We just always heard of it or seen it. Once my uncles were married into the family, they never were attacked ever again. But when people would live there that weren't us, a lot of stuff happened, even to the point where I didn't want to be there by myself, even though nothing's ever happened to me. I was 24 years old, and they'd say, "Oh yeah, we're gonna go get tacos from the taco truck. Just wait at the house." I'd actually wait in front of the house. I wouldn't go inside because it just creeped me out.
Right. Sorry, your microphone's making terrible noises. It's really static. I could hear you, but it was quite.
Here, I can
Did you guys hear it?
We can break in there.
Yeah.
I didn't.
Yeah.
Hear it.
So it seems to me like there was a lot going on in your home, more than just a regular. I don't know much about Mexican witchcraft. That's not my area of expertise, but it feels to me very much like somebody opened a gate, brought through an interdimensional, and couldn't deal with it, or made a deal with it, and it never returned. It's still, I bet you people in that home are still having issues.
Okay.
Maybe. I plan to visit next time I'm in town. But all I know is I saw my great grandma. What I heard, my great grandmother did that stuff. And, if I think about it, maybe my great grandmother didn't like premarital sex and beat the shit out of my now uncles. But there was a lot of other stuff that occurred, just never made sense. And a lot of people that we've seen that we've never seen before just pop up. And it happened before she even passed away. That's a crazy. Everybody in my family's got some story that occurred in that house.
Interesting. Oh, I'd love to hear more. I'd love to hear more about that. That's really interesting.
Yeah,
Very interesting.
it's nice to
actually,
talk about, but
I'm gonna pull up it's a video, but I'm gonna pause it. I want to show you. I don't know if you've seen this. It became very popular. It went viral in the what do you call it, in the Mexican culture. Let me see if I can pick it up here.
Marco, your sound's really bad now too.
Oh,
Is
really?
anybody else hearing that, or is it just me?
No, I think
I don't. I hear
I hear
Chris
fine.
is a little bit, but it's not prominent enough.
Oh, I wonder if it's the connection because you're all making it. Oh, it's quite.
Huh. Let me see.
do you need us to come back, or are you okay?
We can always try disconnecting the mic and then reconnecting.
I think it's yours, Chris. Mute your mic when you're not talking. There we go.
Is that better, Marianne?
No,
No.
Huh.
no.
I don't hear anything right now.
You don't hear anything? Well, hopefully the sound on yours, hopefully everybody else can hear okay. Maybe it's just coming through me for whatever reason.
If you need to, we can stay on the air while if you want to just disconnect and come back. It's up to you if it's bothering you.
No, it's okay. If I have difficulty understanding what you're saying, I'll just ask you to repeat.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I was just gonna share with you this still of this video. It's in Monterrey, Mexico, and this is like an actual. Okay, I don't know if this is back in 2006. We had like our CGI was good. I have to go back and I can't like recollect off the top of my head, but there's this video on YouTube that anybody can go watch. It's called Monterrey Witch, Mexico, which was done in or filmed in May 17th of 2006. And this entity here that's on top of that hill or mountain, you'll see this thing that looks like it's riding on a broom, just going all the way around to the other side of the mountain. See, so I can't play too much because of YouTube, but hopefully that people who are interested can go search that up. Again, that's called Monterrey Witch in Mexico. You can find that on YouTube for anybody that's interested. In fact, I'll actually drop that link here on the comments so that people can check it out as they please. Here you go. Anyway, so you mentioned that you're not very you don't really know much of the Mexican culture and the witchcraft. But I can assure you it's like a whole other realm that we can get into. I don't know if you want to get into that right now, or if you want to talk about something different, like your experiences with the star people.
Sorry, I'm going to have to go out and come back in. I couldn't make out a single word you said then. All I could hear was the static. So excuse me, I'll leave and come back in.
Okay, no problem. Come back when you're ready, okay?
I'm not gonna lie, boys. This is changing my mood big time. I was like super turned on for this. Like I was like really ready to go. You know what I mean? Like a high school kid. High school kid on prom night. Like I was ready. But talking about this stuff, dude, it just makes me feel like down. It makes me feel sad. It makes me feel calm. Like I need some Adderall. You know what I mean? or something going. Cause like I don't know. This topic is deep. I don't know. You guys aren't vibing with it.
No, man. Of course, it's just for me personally. When we started talking about the entity that I saw, and she right away she knew exactly what it was. It gave me the chills. I was like, oh man, this is like, oh, it could be real. Like it's kind of just reassuring that what I saw was actually real, and that's even more frightening than thinking back, like, oh, this is what I thought I saw, and
This-
it's a story. And
These are some images of what you were talking about here.
so for oh my god, dude, this is crazy. I've never searched this up in my life.
But she was saying more like a fedora. And
Yeah.
so like I've seen that, but a lot of the pictures are showing, because you said cowboy hat. So what seemed to be more realistic? Like this?
No, imagine like a cowboy. I mean, I don't know. This was just
A
the
sombrero.
Or like this?
no. It must have been like the other one.
Because
So-
this can seem kind of like a cowboy hat kind of thing. When you
Yeah.
described it and I saw that, I was like, okay.
No, but you know what? It's not a cowboy hat. I'm sorry. It's more of it's a sombrero. And a sombrero is round like that. It's got a round rim like that. And that's, for the people who are just tuning in, who are listening, Greg just pulled up a picture of the Shadow Hat Man. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, Hitman.
Yes.
And so Marianne, was explaining to us how this entity is here to instill fear in people, and that's what it feeds on, people's fear. And but anyway, we were just talking about how the mood that we had coming into this podcast was like, oh yeah, we're excited to talk about spooky things, but it got real once we started to really to relate to things. So yeah, I don't know.
It hits hard because, as you can see, my name's Chris, but I go by the Degenerate because I typically have a lot of energy, I have a lot to contribute. But I'm telling you right now, I'm just not feeling it. I'm feeling relatively what's the word? I mean, I'm very conservative right now. I don't feel like I'm adding a lot of value to this because I just feel so drained, physically drained, and more maybe emotionally drained. Just getting this stuff out of my chest. Yeah.
Yeah.
Chris, do you think that it's because things became real after having some, Marianne's feedback and almost affirmation of what you've experienced?
Not necessarily, because I've always thought it was real. Like, I know it's real. No, it wasn't really a thought. I would never questioned it. It's just, I think sometimes when I talk about it, it's just a different version of me. I just have to get more serious because I don't want you to think that it's a joke, what I'm telling you. Sometimes I take things out of context to make things, funnier than they seem or whatever. And this is not the case. This is what I've experienced throughout my life in different moments. Like, at the moment, I'm not experiencing anything. Since I moved to this house and I moved to Arizona, I don't experience anything. I haven't seen anything. I haven't felt anything. I can honestly say, maybe because it's a new build, who knows? I thrive off of energy that's been on homes in the past that other people have lived in. Not the case now, which is refreshing, but it's nothing to really joke about.
It is serious. It is serious, and it creates a lot of fear in a lot of people. And people fear what they don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's why I run to my room. I don't understand what's behind me, what that feeling is.
But don't you like that feeling when you're walking down the hallway and then you're like, okay, I have to turn off the light. My room is like 15 yards from here, right? So I'm a grown man, right? I'm in my 30s. You double check, no one's behind you, and you still kind of, walk a little fast, arch your back a little bit because you don't want something to grab you with its fingertip. Yeah, it still happens. I like that feeling sometimes. I don't lie.
I've never experienced anything. Like, no one's ever broken into my house. I've never been robbed. Like, I have no reason to fear anything like that. But I always have. Always feel like I've been ready for something to jump out. Like, at night when I go to the bathroom and I can't see anything, I walk with a fist when I first open the door, like, ready to go.
That comes to.
He carries his shank everywhere.
So I don't know if it's just my fear of everything or if maybe something else is going on there. But
that might come to our DNA, back when we were our great ancestors. Like, they couldn't go out at night because at night meant, there was fear.
Danger.
Like, you could get attacked or danger by an animals or another group. So that's why you always feel more comfortable with a group of people. And that's why you feel more comfortable during the day than at night. But I mean, I personally, I love that feeling. I love going down the hallway in the middle of the night, like 2 2 a.m. and just stare into the darkness. Don't move, just stare.
Now,
You get a little bump in the night.
I had a question for you. Now that Chris brings this point about our ancestors, these entities or spirits, have they always been here? Like from your experience or from what you know and what you've your education or on this subject, do you know if this has always been the case for ages? I mean, since the beginning of time, or when did this start?
So you asking if humankind has always seen spirit and ghosts?
Mm-hmm. Basically.
Yeah. These records go back way, 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 way back about people. Some of the ancient Greeks, in fact, the first, I don't know, I couldn't pronounce it even if I knew his name, but one of the first recorded ghost stories, ghost hauntings, was written by a Greek person way back, and he'd brought this house and he was woken every night by the sounds of these chains rattling. And finally, it disturbed him so much he asked this he never can't remember if he saw a ghost or not. He asked what it was, and this ghost appeared and took him to a spot and pointed to a spot in his ground. So the next day the guy dug it and found the bones of this guy, and
Whoa.
he was never disturbed after that. And that was way back in ancient Greek times. So yeah, it's been around forever. Mm-hmm.
I would almost imagine that there was probably more stories back then, more incidences, whether they're a fact or not, right? Sometimes it could be just played up, but they didn't have the distractions we have now. I think the more that we progress as a human species and have all these electronic devices and vices as TV and this and that, we detach ourselves from it even more. So the majority of the group probably doesn't really pay attention to that nearly as much. And if they do, they just opt it to something else, the medication or imagination or this and that.
Right.
Yeah.
And also humanity as a whole has lost the connection with nature. How many of you guys ever go around without socks on or shoes on?
I live without socks. I'd show you my feet right now, but they haven't been pedicured lately.
I'm bare feet as well. In New Zealand, where it was the funniest thing when I went and lived in the States with my then husband for some time. He was from North Carolina, and I'm used to going around bare feet because that's just how we do it in New Zealand. Go to the supermarket bare feet, it's just Kiwi culture. We're very casual. And I went to a farmer's market, and my husband said to me, "Where are your shoes?" And I said, "I'm not wearing shoes. Why do I need shoes on?" And people stared at me. And a lady came up to me and said, "Oh my dear, can't you afford to buy shoes?"
Yeah, we have no shoes, no shirt, no service.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the point I'm trying to make is that we disconnect ourselves from the ground. We're not connected with the earth like we used to be.
Right.
Whether we live in a high-rise apartment or whether we just live in a regular house, so many of us never go around bare feet. And there are physiological benefits. They call it grounding. There's plenty of videos on YouTube about grounding and the energies and the physiological benefits, the scientifically proven physiological benefits this has for you. So humanity's lost their way a lot. And I think that they're trying to compensate by all these television shows about ghosts and stuff. It's a way of trying to find what we lost in a way.
Okay.
Funny you say that, because I was watching a TV show, I mean, not to play devil's advocate, where I was told if you actually travel consistently, travel pretty often and far from home, where you go through different time zones, we're from California or to the UK or to Italy, wherever it may be, one of the best things to do to recalibrate yourself to also try to alleviate any type of jet lag is take off your shoes, take off your socks, go and walk around the grass, the dirt, wherever it may be, whatever country you're at, spend a few hours just barefoot. it helps ground you, and it helps recalibrate your entire body to a degree. And I was like, oh shoot, Zac Efron has got something going on here.
Yeah, absolutely. And your mic's doing it again. Yeah, it's absolutely correct. It grounds you. It recalibrates your energies. One thing that I always say to people when they're looking at doing any spiritual stuff, there are some basic things you need to know. One is the grounding. Grounding is so important. Not only does it help recalibrate your energies, but it helps keep you focused and balanced. And there's many different ways you can ground. Like the physical grounding is really important. That's really important. But there's other ways you can do it too. It's just bringing your focus back to the here and now. You could say, look around your room and say, okay, my wall is white, my ceiling's blue, whatever. And that brings your focus here and now if you're feeling a little bit unbalanced. Or you can visualize yourself, if you're a visual person, a person who can see things in their mind, you can visualize yourself like your legs becoming tree trunks and taking root into the ground. But the best way to do it is by taking your shoes and socks off and going bare feet.
Is this where the expression, like when people say, oh, that person is very grounded, is that where it comes from?
I think that's kind of where it started.
Oh, that's very interesting. Man, see, you learn something new every day. So I know we've been stuck with this whole paranormal and this paranormal activity stuff topic for a little bit, but I really wanted to get to the next topic of the star people, from your experiences first, and then and then go from there. It's a very, very popular topic nowadays. I don't know if you've heard, but in the COVID relief bill that our ex-president or the former president signed, it said that that the government had 182 days to basically just relay all the information that they have on the subject to the American people.
Okay, so all I heard from that was bringing the stuff to the American people. Everything else was just massive static. So I'm going to take an educated guess at what you said. So you're talking about the information that's been brought to the public over the past couple of years, yes?
Yeah. So can you hear me now?
No, this is so bad. I cannot hear you at all, Marco.
Are you able to hear me clear?
I can't hear you either, Greg.
Okay, I think it's the connection with StreamYards because
this is incredible. I've never had an issue like this.
We've got many listeners here. They're overloading us now.
I can't hear anything.
Yeah, I think if let's see.
Yeah, it has to be the connection. That's so crazy. Okay, so can you type out your question and I'll answer it.
All right. So I'll
That's probably the easiest way to do it. Connection. Okay, star people. So I've noticed while you're typing that over the past 2 to 3 years, COVID relief bills. Oh yes, absolutely. Now there's a reason for that. I was told back in the 80s, this is last millennia, that the governments had been told that they had to release all the information about star people to humanity, or the choice would be taken out of their hands.
Mm-hmm.
And the beings that I work with would step in and saw that humanity was made aware of the presence of other beings besides humanity. So slowly over the past 2 or 3 years, your government has been releasing information about star people bit by bit by bit, like started with those Tic Tac videos.
Right.
Do you remember those that
Yes.
the government released? to the public, and then later last year or earlier this year, I can't remember when, maybe late last year, they came out and said, yes, these are real, yes, they are unidentified objects, we don't know who created them.
Right.
So basically what they did then was they acknowledged that, yes, star people are real, but who created these UFOs, we don't know. They call them UAPs these days, unidentified aerial phenomenon or something like that.
Yeah.
Yes, so the past about 3 years, they've been slowly drip feeding everybody. And then you notice the media changed their attitude on how they reported these things. It was no longer with skepticism and making fun of them. It became serious. And yes, these beings are here. Yes, this is real. You know, the whole attitude changed. And that's part of a concerted public manipulation to get people to become aware of the presence of these beings, so that in a very short space of time they can come out and actually introduce some star species to humanity. That's the ultimate goal. Yes, they've got something like 90 days or something like that left to release all this information. So it's going to be a very interesting time.
Yeah, you can bet that we'll be there live to do the podcast.
Well, what do you think the purpose of
everybody's quite okay? So a bit more. Your government, I know this is kind of a one-sided conversation because I can't hear you, but your government made an agreement with specific star species in exchange for technology, information. However, the beings they made these agreements with don't necessarily have humanity's best interests at heart. In fact, they don't. And your government has a lot. When I say your government is the most obvious one, but it's not the only one. But your government was the one that made the overt agreement with these beings, not the groups that I have any contact with beings that don't have the humans' best interest at heart. So part of what's happening now is that those who currently control this reality as we are aware of it are being taken care of and removed. And part of this is to that they have to be open and transparent about what's happening. That's why this push with all this information. Like I said, if they didn't do it, it would have been taken out of their hands, and they kept it till the very last minute, and they've been using the excuse that humanity isn't ready for it, humanity can't handle it, but actually that's bullshit. The situation is that the government has to face up to the lies they've been telling you guys for decades.
Right. Are you able to hear us now? Can you hear me now?
Are they the same group of entities? The ones that made contact with your government, are you talking about? There's a group of them. Think of Star Wars, okay? There's a federation. It's the easiest way to explain it. There's a federation of beings, a group of not so nice beings, a group of beings that I work who are wanting humanity to be free and to be able to make decisions for themselves without being manipulated. Because at the moment we only have the illusion of free thought and freedom. Our thoughts are the way we think, the way we feel is very carefully manipulated. And you will have noticed this particularly around the COVID, social engineering. I hate social engineering, but they're doing it all the time on people. And one of the biggest things that they've done that I've noticed with the COVID is they use terms and they repeat these terms time and time and time again, like the new norm. This is the new norm, setting in people's minds that this is the way it's going to be from here on in. So part of what's going to be happening is that these controls that are used on us are going to be removed. So humanity will be able to think for themselves, to find their own spiritual path without outside interference from any beings, my team included. They are not here to tell humanity what to do. They're just there to help humans become free of those who currently control us, and then they will step back and let us grow ourselves.
Wow.
That's my basic understanding in a nutshell. Yeah. I'm okay with that, Marco. That's cool.
So for whatever reason, Marianne is unable to hear us. We will probably continue this conversation with her on another podcast. If everyone here who is watching live is interested in
Yeah, I can't hear you guys at all. I'm so sorry. I don't know what's happened. I've never, ever had this before. This is the first time I've experienced this.
yeah, no problem. I think Greg will be the translator for a little bit. We're gonna wrap this up just for today's podcast. We're very sorry that this happened. Again, you know, this is the Rabbit Hole podcast. Today we were talking to Mrs. Marianne Coleman. She's had a lifetime experience as a medium, as you just heard. She's had a lot of experiences with UFOs or star people, and she also runs a paranormal investigation team. If you want to be up to date on what she's up to nowadays, you can go to www.walkingtheshadowlands.com, where you'll find her podcast, her Instagram, and also we're going to be linking all that in the description below. So make sure you follow, subscribe, like the video, so that when we go back and speak to Marianne, we will definitely get into some more interesting topics with her. So yeah, I mean, do you have any closing thoughts, Greg, Chris?
No, I just want to thank her again for coming in, and it was a great conversation to hear different experiences. I didn't know about Chris, and I didn't know about the story you were talking about, Marco, with the Shadow Man.
Right.
So, I mean, I learned 2 new things about you guys as well. So it was a good time.
Yeah, I also want to thank Marianne for popping on and giving me some insight and some stuff that I probably otherwise would have just kept on thinking. So thank you once again. So yeah, great podcast, guys.
Awesome. So again, you guys can follow us on Twitter, Facebook at TPP is loading, just so that you guys can keep up and be alerted as soon as we're live and we take interesting topics and guests like Marianne. But anyway, I think that's it for this week. Thank you guys for joining us, and we will talk to you again next week. Bye-bye, everybody.